Okay. Um, yeah. Happy, was it Wednesday? As I'm recording this, happy Wednesday. Thought I would thought I would look at what am I calling it in the title? I think I'm calling it hex mapping on the fly. Hey Terrence. Hey Ian. This is something we're gonna get into it, right? But I notice, I get questions and comments and things, and I see comments and things and procedures. And this is, I wouldn't say primarily for solo players, but I think it will, whatever we develop, and this is all kind of work in progress, sort of idea generation. So not super final, something this is we're going to be working on. This concept of generating your hex map, hex by hex as you explore. I'm going to be honest, I don't get it. And the reason I don't get it is that unless you're playing a game that's, I don't know, in the Stone Age, um, the idea that you're going into a hex and it is essentially kind of unknown and unknowable until you step foot in that hex, and then you're going to roll it up and determine what it is, doesn't seem natural to me. I don't know when the last time in human history that would have been true in kind of in any way. I mean, I guess you could even, in some ways, it doesn't even seem to be physically possible. If I'm on a Unless I'm in the place of never ending fog, if I'm in a this kind of grassland, chances are, especially if I'm in kind of 3 6 mile hexes, chances are I'm going to be able to see in the distance something. Oh, look, there's hills over there, something of that. And if obviously you can imagine, well, if I'm on this edge, maybe I can't see all the way over. But what happens when what happens as I get to that area? The other thing is that, people live everywhere and have since time immemorial, since the beginning of time. Of course, not quite that far in advance, but and though in different, depending on history, culture, whatever, people may have ignored the fact that there were locals around there that maybe they couldn't communicate with or didn't bother to try, or for all kinds of cultural whatever reasons, right? But there were people living around there. So what circumstances, if you're not playing someone who is ignorant of such things and has traveled from across the sea and refuses to listen to anybody or won't or whatever they're doing, and they're like, you know what, you're going to be either you're going to have, or it's going to be fairly trivial to get at least a rough imagining of what's going on in your particular part of the world. Obviously, maybe not super far, but you're going to be able to know that. But I also know that I'm not blind to the fact that this is a way that people like to play, part of that discovery, which I think is why I put solo play kind of first, is that idea of in the solo game is having that surprise. And I think a lot of folks don't like, or it's suboptimal, I guess, to be able to see your terrain before you're going in there. And folks, if you are a solo player, you let me know. Maybe I'm completely off base, maybe I'm not. You can let me know kind of your thought process. But I have some ideas. And my ideas are not to actually generate the hex map as you go. The reason why I'm not a fan of that idea is I don't think there's been, and also, I guess if you have a tool that solves some of these problems that I have seen, I've experienced, because I have not used all the tools. I'm not an expert at every tool. Haven't seen it. There's so many tools out there. If you know about a tool that you go, hey, wait a minute, no, this tool solves some or all of what we're talking about, please share it. So one of the problems that comes up when you're generating your hex on the fly, and here, let me do something here. I'm going to select an area. I'm going to select that. And I could do hide all but selected, right? Oh yeah, I got to show off GM only. Bam. I wish there was a way to shade this so I could kind of partially hide it, but not totally hide it. In any case, if I'm here and I decide as part of my solo play, or if I'm running this for a party and they decide to come into this next hex, all right? Oh yeah, I could use a generator. I could go ahead and generate that, and that's going to work okay. Okay, grasslands. We go into grasslands. Great, that's fine. The problems can arise though in terms of like water, because here we have this river. If I had generated a bunch of hexes and then I generate water in here, you can end up in situations that don't entirely make sense. Well, where did the water go? Oh, we have a river in here. It's a raging river, but where does it go? Well, we can't really say, or we have to come up with something. Well, maybe we explored this hex here and we just didn't see the river, but maybe that's impossible, because how did we cross all the way through here if there was a raging river coming through? That's probably the biggest one, rivers. I think the other thing is that it can be difficult to get trends. You can either get a lot of sameness because you're using kind of a weighted weighted tool that will say, hey, if you're in the grasslands and you're going to roll, then 4 to 6 times you're going to get more grasslands, and you can have these huge swaths of grasslands, which maybe work for you, maybe not. Or you can end up the other way, where everything is a super hodgepodge. You got everything kind of all over the place. It's like this whole patchwork of different things. It can happen because the idea is that it's difficult to generate one piece of terrain when you don't know any of the pieces of terrain around it. I mean, most times if you use something like Worldographer or something like Asgard, they use a lot of things behind the surface to look at the landscape, the continent or the planet or whatever amount of land, and try to look at it kind of holistically, and given where it thinks it resides in terms of what biomes and or where it is, latitudinally, wherever it is, geographically, and what kind of environments are there, and it tries to do all that so that you get somewhat of an Earth-like whole. But you lose all of that if you're doing it one square at a time and refusing, because we're doing one square as you enter it, to see what is beyond. I am refusing. Well, it introduces difficulties. And my original thing when people approached me with this before was to say, like, well, like, I don't even know if it's okay, we're playing fantasy games, right? Like, but you have humans, you have other things that are all over these landscapes. You're going to be running into them on your solo map. Is it really realistic? Because it's not really in the real world that you're going to get to an area and presuming there's you're not Robinson Crusoe crashed on an island all by yourself and only monsters around. There are towns, settlements. Those people live in the area. They've lived there for generations unknown, and they have gone. There are enterprising people have gone out and done stuff, and well, they're going to kind of know what's going on. I presume they're going to kind of have some idea of what's out there. So why can't you have some idea of what's out there? But I get it, the whole discovery thing. So something that somebody I think brought it up when we were looking at Source of the Nile. They had mentioned, or either as a rule or something that they did, that when they played Source of the Nile, and Source of the Nile, if you missed that stream went over, you haven't heard about it, it's a game in which you start on the coast of Africa, and it's kind of a it's a kind of a colonial kind of game where you, as the great white explorer, are, and it's not that they necessarily, it's not really explicit, but it's kind of, well, I mean, it is by this whole setting. It's 19th century. You're essentially European, I think, explorer, and you're coming to find the source of the Nile. And so you start on the coast of Africa and you go into the interior, and it's got all kinds of rules, which we looked at, for how to essentially, it's got a bunch of blank hexes in the middle of the continent, and you're going in and you're filling it as you go along, and you're trying to find the source of the Nile. And it had some neat rules for doing kind of something similar to what in solo play you're doing when you go into a hex and you don't know what's in there and you're looking for it, and it's got water and all these other things. But there's some key things that I remember kind of occurring to me. Is the advantage that that game has is essentially, let me do this again, let's see. Oh, Magnus says, have I heard about the map making software Humble Bundle? I have not. I will have to look at that. What's in it? If Nightbot doesn't stop you, Magnus, please drop. All right, let's see. Let's see if I can do this. Basically, what you get in, I'll take a second. Oh, wait a minute. I guess I'll do this. What you get in, there we go. You get in Source of the Nile, something like this. Sorry, it's going to take me another second to get these in here. You get something like this. You get the exterior. What the exterior tells you, well, a couple of things it tells you. One, you see you have these rivers, you know where rivers are exiting. You kind of get a sense of, if this was a continent, that things are either going to exit one way river wise, right? Go to one, and also they have coastline. They have the entire coastline around. So that tells you some important things. Okay, yeah, drop it in Discords, please do, and I'll copy and paste it in if it's not too long. If I don't get blocked, you have coastlines. So you have this exterior that you can come from, and then if I come to this, right? If I come to this hex, I kind of know some things about the river. If I come to this hex, I kind of know some things, and I know where the river is going. I know where the rivers are all going to be going towards one of these coasts. So if I'm running in rivers, a lot of the things that can be kind of bedeviling, and I think probably water courses is one of the big things that's good. It just becomes a bedeviling issue if you're trying to do one hex at a time. All you have to do is solve for, you can put some kind of if-then statements, which is what they do in the game. Hey, if you've got a river entering and you have a river leaving, then clearly there's going to be if you don't roll if you roll this hex up and it's not a wetlands or something, it's got to have that river in it because the river's got to follow through. And if it's a major river, they also will put strengths. So we might call this river some major river. We'll call it 8 or something. That means that it has to go 8 segments kind of touching or going into water stuff before it can end, which means you don't get any weird oddities of like, there's a river here and it's a big river, but then it goes blank. Or, oh, look, this is kind of a major thing. And oh, wait, where did it go? It goes nowhere. So they use some kind of tricks that might not be evident at first glance, but the tricks are there. I think this part of it, this having the outline, it works in the kind of 19th century colonial type thing because Africa wasn't an unknown, at least if we're looking from the European explorer point of view, the exterior of Africa, the coastline, such and such, was not unknown. There were lots of parts that were known. It's just that kind of the middle was, say, more or less unknown from the European explorer point of view, right? From the point of view of the character you were portraying, the interior is unknown where the exterior is known. If you're playing a solo game and you have a similar thing, like if you were on an island of some sort and you knew the whole exterior of the island, but then the interior was unknown, you could probably use a similar system to pretty good effect. So, okay, so Magnus talking about this map extravaganza has Campaign Cartographer 3, City Designer 3, Dungeon Designer 3, source map for castles and temples, some symbol sets, some token sets, a battle map, floor plan, the isometric mapping. I actually have Campaign Cartographer. I just don't tend to use it. It's off of it's like an AutoCAD style interface. I could do a stream where I mess around with it. I'm just terrible at it, and I've never managed to get better at it. Probably right the reason why I don't do it, but it is really, really strong, especially if you want to do more artisanal maps, but not hand drawn kind of thing, or a different kind of what we call it, hand engineered. Okay, so you could do something like that, but what someone pointed out to me about Source of the Nile is that once you play a game, if we were to say this was our map, we played a game and maybe we didn't win or whatever happened, we died. Our character we were playing killed, captured, forced into early retirement, whatever. But they had done all this mapping. What happens when the next person comes? The next player, your next character might start back here, and you'd have all this is known, but it would be kind of legend. It would be receding from fact. It would no longer be a sure thing, but it would be kind of the base. This becomes sort of, well, maybe you inherited these maps, but they're of unknown provenance, so you don't know. So you kind of have this vague idea this stuff might be out there, but then during play, it might change. And that I thought was an intriguing idea for either solo play or playing with a group. Any case where you as the world or cartographer want to have some of that surprise without having to, while still being able to kind of set up kind of a baseline type thing. Dries says steep learning curve for campaign cartographer software for sure. Yes, it is very steep. I mean, yeah, Magnus, for the price, it's totally worth it. I've had it for years, and I will periodically go back and try to get something out of it. It is super powerful. A lot of good stuff. It has a really tough learning curve, but it can do a lot. There's a lot of support for it. really tons of art packs and different artists, or I guess I should say like artist packs and their things. And they also have those periodicals that they put out with lots of interesting things on it, but it's tough. Hey, here's a homebrew. Worldographer, the struggles are a bit different, but if it's just a different kind of, or at least for me anyway, it's just kind of different. I'll have to do it since that I'll have to reinstall it on my current computer, and and I could do a stream as I fumble about trying to figure out how campaign cartographer works again. Hey, Chloe. Brian says they struggle with digital tools. It's hard to get their ideas as quickly as they can with paper. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, if you're trying to get something out, yes, I agree. I can't. None of these tools work as well as paper. And if I had a really proper kind of permanent setup with enough surface area, I would totally do more paper stuff on stream. I just don't. And here is some. What is this? I think this is grapefruit spindrift for the working man. Not my favorite. Definitely not my favorite. Not Spindrift's fault. I just don't like grapefruit. But we get these packs. Costco has some, they good deals, but in bulk, and they have an in bulk Spindrift pack, but it's kind of a multi-pack, and the grapefruit's one of the flavors. I do see the chat, Chloe. I do. I may not always respond, but I do see it. Oh, my favorite Spindrift. Oh man, blood orange. The kind of Mandarin blood orange is probably my favorite. Yeah, Spindrift tier list for sure. When I'm super trying to get my my Spindrift sponsorship. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Brian says they get too wrapped up in the UIs. Yeah, I hear you. And campaign cartographers, I think, is more harder than most. Hey, Chloe, I appreciate it, but I want to keep it to the subject at hand. You can text me offline or find me on social media and ping me. I don't want to get too far afield. So the idea I had was using whichever tool. If you want to use Asgars, or you want to use Worldographer, or you want to use any of the various tools, avail yourself of them and just draw out the whole. Get your whole map out there. Use a random generator if you want to. Any of that kind of stuff, right? Get your map out on the page, and then what we can do is we can start looking at it and starting to distinguish between kind of the known. I'm going to start writing some stuff in here to keep track, right? The known versus the oh, you know what? It's just there we go. Oops, can I move you? Known versus the known versus the, I guess, rumored report, right? Known versus rumored. And this is where I would love if I could get some shading, right? Because we could look at it. Maybe there's a way to do it. Fog of War seems to be kind of all or nothing. I don't think there's a good. I don't know if there's a good way to do shading, unfortunately. I mean, there probably is. I could probably do something. Is there a shading kind of thing? Shipping, boarding. Yeah, I don't know. This is what I was looking for. Unfortunately, I feel like I can use the Fog of War, but it's going to be imperfect. I don't want to cover it up completely. Brian Smith would not want to waste a precious day off learning Worldographer. I hear you. Brian says, reading in a hammock by a river. Oh yeah. What, are you Huck Finn, Brian? I mean, not that are you Frodo waiting for Gandalf in the Shire? I wish I had easy access to riverside hammocks and reading. All right, so let's I guess I'm gonna have to use the let's use the Fog of War here. I'm gonna select an area. Let's say, so we're starting in here. So let's get into it. So we're starting here. I gotta turn off GM mode. Nope. Or here, let me oh yeah, hide all but select. There we go. Yeah, Heroes of Homebrew mentioned. Yeah, I'm trying to do something visually. Heroes of Homebrew. I know you could do notes and things, but that means I have to open up all these things to look at them. I'm trying to be visual, and unfortunately, it's just it's a little bit of a pain. It would just be nice to have a feature. Like, could I set it on, with, I don't know. There's probably some way to do it, maybe, but I'm not gonna try to figure it out now. So you start off in this hex here. Okay. Let's just do this, right? You're starting off in this hex. Oh yeah, I gotta turn on GM mode again. So let's just start with the hex, right? If we're looking at, well, what do we know? I'm gonna say that we're gonna know these three hexes. So let's see if I did this correctly. Yeah. I'm going to say that as the absolute default, your starting area is going to be wherever you are and then the hexes around them. If you're using some kind of ginormous hex size, you could maybe make the argument that you don't, but I would imagine you're going to be able to see this. You're going to see that this water, lake, ocean, whatever is here. I think it's a lake. See the river. You're going to see the grasslands. You're going to see these broken lands or maybe canyon lands, whatever that is over there. You're going to see those. So we could start from there. Okay, now let's go back to the GM view. It's also, and by the way, this is going to require some prep on your part. You're going to have to look at your map and kind of do some configuration here. I'm going to also argue that now you can also come up with, if you want to come up with some kind of reasoning why some of this shouldn't be true for your realm, that's absolutely, you can also do that as well. Size of hexes is going to make a difference. A lot of things are going to come into play. I would imagine, now my point of view is, let's see if we go back, turn this off. My point of view is the rivers are main waterways for travel, for trade, for fishing, for consuming. Maybe you could say that, hey, the lake and this bit of river is all that they know. They don't go beyond it. You could kind of make the arguments. I'm going to say that they're at least going to know the river. I'm going to say up until it goes into the hills. Let's say that. And then because that river's known, I'm going to say they're going to know those hills too. And they're going to, and these are mountains, presumably some kind of peaks. They're going to know that. So now we've got this much of the map. And you can adjust this to suit, obviously. If you wanted to say, just for reasons of your own, that you're only starting with the bare minimum of the hex you're in and the surrounding hexes, that's fine. I mean, part of for me is that we're assuming that we're starting at some kind of town settlement somewhere, and therefore, even though we haven't marked it, because the map when I originally drew it had no settlements on it, so I just marked this here. But we could probably look at it that if I was, whoops, the reality is that I would probably be doing, it would look more like, what's this? Cottage. Do we have, I know there's a village symbol here. I'm just going to try to find it. What is that? Clan moot? Kind of specific. What is that? Settlement village, settlement town. Okay, so we're going to have, oh my, what am I doing? What is it doing? Okay, let's see. That was weird. Did I just find a bug? Okay, so let's see if it'll let me do it now. I'm thinking the reality is we're going to have something like that. And so if we assume that this is the same border-wise, that this is the, maybe let's just do, let's put the borders in just for giggles. And let's just say that this is our beginning, polygon, and I will, yep, I got snap. Holy how of the. So we end up with a border like that around our. This is around our kind of known. Let me entertain you by turning the heck off this width. Jeez. Okay, maybe a little more than that. Oops. All right. Okay. So now we have kind of what I would consider to be a decent starting area. Given, and I'm just trying to break it down. These are the things to me that it would seem like would be obvious that you know. But like I said, if you want to go with a much smaller area and damnations and torpedoes to any thoughts that just that I'm not going to know that, even though maybe it would make sense you'd know that. That's fine, right? Whatever. What if you require it for your brand of fun, then by all means ignore me and go for it. But we're going to start here in terms of, okay, given everything we have, what we know about this area, we've set this up, and this in a way is just kind of setting up your. I mean, really, what I'm doing here, though maybe I'm not. I'm explaining it. Well, I'm definitely explaining it poorly. This is just the starting kind of culture society area, right? This is the the duchy of blah blah blah, and this is where you're starting. And so this is the duchy. Is these 6 hexes, and it's got, and maybe there's another one of these as a town. It might make sense that that's a town, or that there's a town over here, right? They're whatever. At the moment, it's just very simple. The town kind of thing is here, and there'd probably be a road, and whatever, that kind of stuff, right? I don't want to get too far into the weeds. But here's your starting area. This is kind of the known stuff. And now you're looking at going, this is their world. And it might make sense that when you get out to this size, this could very well be this is a very small area. And maybe if we were to draw a town, or if we were to put a road, it's going to be way too big. That maybe the road would go somewhere like, I don't know. Right here. Kind of like that. Maybe that's the road. Something like that. Okay. So we got that. Now, as I open this up, we know I should, hold on 1 second. Let me do one other thing. I'm going to make another region. I'm going to call it a border, different color. Let's call it, give it that light blue. I'm just going to mark off what we know. Light blue is actually not the right color because it's the same color as my river. So I will have to amend that. That way we could turn on the GM view and I can see. But here's our, maybe I'll do it white. All right, let's see. Let's boom, 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 boom. Change that to white. Or is there a gray? There we go. And then, gosh, turn down that size. No, wrong way. Okay. There we go. Might not be super obvious. So inside here, this is our known area, right? So what happens? Well, let's just make some rules here to start. So known areas are at least 1 hex around known or established hexes. So that would be maybe our first rule, right? So a known hex, and known here, we're just we're just doing it in terms of maybe we should do different thing. Maybe I don't know if I need different lingo, or we might. So I'm just going to put another thing here. Whoops. I might need some terms. So maybe we'll have so I think we need known. I want to have a scouted. Maybe known should be the, what would be the one thing if known? What would be, maybe known as the, should be at the bottom, and the top should be, well, there's rumored. And then all right. These are our, if we were going to have gradations of knowledge, levels. We're gonna have levels. I suppose we should have an unknown, just for giggles. Unknown, which I think actually should be quite rare. Unknown should be, has never been cataloged, kind of thing, right? Unknown has never been cataloged. So maybe I should do, I might have to change this up. So areas established. Okay, so spotted would be, hold on, any hexes that surround established or known hexes are at minimum spotted. But I said minimum. Okay. Spotted hexes, the terrain is known. Landmark or obvious features are known in a scouted. Maybe I don't need explored and known, actually. Oh my gosh, Brian Smith, sorry about the mice. I've had to deal with mice. I mean, I'm constantly dealing with mice at the Studio B location. And I know there's some around. They tend not to show themselves, but then when they do, or they're more likely their leavings showing themselves, it's a frustration. And yeah, and I hate to do the kind of kill traps, but I'm not there. So either I do a kill trap, or if I do another kind of trap, it's going to end up being a kill trap, because it takes, usually I'm not, once every few weeks I'm there. So if something happens and I'm not there to do anything with it, then it essentially is a kill trap. Anyway. Terrence gets field mice whenever they have heavy rain. Yeah, my cats are terrible mousers, and now they're older, so they're even less likely to do it. I wish I had some. That's the one thing. Our mice are not. I mean, our cats, they just don't into it. They're also city cats. I don't know if that if that changes anything, but they're not country cats too. So we take them up there. They look at the mice like they're some kind of aliens from outer space and don't really mess with it. Okay, so we have our, so now we have our gradations of knowledge. Let's fill in, let's use some labels here to fill some things in. So I'm going to put a label. We're going to go with known. All right. Oh, that's huge. Let me just, let's do that. White. Give it a, oh, it help if I spelled things correctly. How big is that? Choose the size as a percentage of the height. That seems like an awfully, let's make it smaller. Smaller, how about 50? Okay. All right, so we've got known there. Now we've got spotted, which I could also see using, marked. right? That makes sense. We're talking about outside the red line, inside the gray line. Oof. Turn that down. There we go. On the style tab, I can choose custom. Oh, okay. I'm okay with it where it is right now. So there's the spotted, and then if we were to make another line, maybe we could put another line and just or anything outside. I guess is maybe we could call and this is going to come down right again. Come down to your dealer's choice. You put rumored. Ooh, the crows are out. And also we could have just unknown if we chose. Like I said, I have a hard time thinking that stuff could be totally unknown, but whatever. I'm not going to I can rotate this, right? Yes, I can. Oh, maybe minus. No. Minus 90. Oh. I have to go what 180? No. If I do that, why is it I want it the other way? Can I not do minus 90? No. Anyway, all right. Well, I'll just whatever. I guess I got to go 90 degrees that way. All right. Okay. There we go. So we got known stuff, and I probably shouldn't have covered up my. I'm not exactly sure how I'm supposed to. How do I edit that? But anyway, okay. So like known, do that. So known is inside. I think we get the gist, right? Now I can maybe cut that out. I can zoom in here a little more. Okay. Gradations of knowledge. Unknown has never been cataloged. I think this would be rare. But, your game, your campaign world, rumored. Brain is, I don't know. What's the difference between rumored and spotted? I guess. Maybe something is no. So I was going to get to something else here. Like things are getting away from me. All right. So I want to talk about, because a lot of what we're doing here, right, is we're setting up this. We're setting up this this open worldish area, and we're establishing what do we know versus what we don't know. And the idea here is that you can, since we're throwing the map out there, and I understand from a lot of solo players' perspectives and maybe other GMs' perspectives that they don't like knowing that much. So what I want to do is I want to take advantage of. So what we can do is we can take advantage of the map by having things make as much sense or as little as we want, and just do it, or use a generator to do it, and then not worry about the fact. And then what we do is then we use that as a baseline, but then during play, things can things can vary from this baseline. If the baseline was this idea of the world, the map, so to speak, right? The map, then the actual territory, once you get there, might not match the map. So you can still have that discovery. You still have things be off in some way different. So in a sense, I'm trying to get close to this kind of concept of having your cake and eating it too. Let's take advantage of all the map making tools we have to get a map that makes sense that you can really set up and go and do that. And yes, there are hex flowers, and yes, there are other methods. I've made some methods, but they're all, frankly, I find them all a little bit kludgy because it's very hard to do this design when you're doing each hex in isolation, pretty much, and then building outward. It gets a little bit kludgy, and water and water features particularly are like that. But just in terms of just things kind of making sense, you can end up in some kind of nonsensical, however you want to define that term. So what I'm suggesting is use the map tools, whatever ones you like, and just generate the map. But then we look at that map and say, hey, this was handed to you, it was given to you in a bar, it's smudged, nobody's been out there for years, or it's just flat out wrong. Somebody made it up. Somebody just was paid down the line for this map, just made it up, or the locals never go there, but they just whatever it's made up. Right? It's not true, maybe capital T true, until somebody gets out there, presumably you as the solo player or your party as the party, if you're jamming, and kind of gets boots on the ground and actually takes a fresh look. They say that the river up here goes out into those hills, and whatever's beyond, we don't know. Well, see a bit up in that hills, and they say they see this thing. Okay, but maybe they're who is that? That's old Pete. What's old Pete been doing? Well, he talks a lot, he drinks a lot, hasn't been employed in 30 years. So how trustworthy is this information? Maybe not very. Okay, so we can have our map. It can make sense, but we can also vary from the map. We can have some nice surprises for ourselves, for our party, for everybody, but still take advantage of all the tools and all things to have a map, so that we're starting from a canvas in a way that kind of makes sense. But then we can go in and kind of muck with that canvas, and kind of giving ourselves permission to, because our canvas isn't law. Our canvas is just kind of, well, what it seems like, until somebody gets out there. This is what I think it is, but it's almost like we're writing it in pencil. And when the party gets there, or there's a solo player, then it gets written in pen. And maybe the pen will be exactly the same as the pencil sketch. Maybe the pen will differ, and we'll see something new that they didn't see. So, does that make sense? Terrence always trusts the local homeless cranks, as you should. Magnus says locals may not even have a proper map. They might sketch you something or carve a vague outline in the table. Yeah, I mean, yes. I'm simply trying to. The idea is that here is really just that the map. I mean, the map is in the grounds, right? And that we're treating the map as kind of a maybe. We're basically treating the map as this might be true, and however that looks like fictionally, whether it's word of mouth, story, legend, bad maps, fake maps, not even maps, right? It's just, that's all however you want to come up with what the fictional reasoning is. But the idea really is that the map you're building, that map you start with, that map that you're pulling out of something like Worldographer or Hexkit or Asgars, is the potential map. And it might be this. Maybe that's if everything went right in the universe, this would be the platonic ideal of this area, but the reality of this area may differ a little or more than a little from what this is. But it gives us something to go with. And we can use certain things like rivers that are going to be major landmarks to kind of look and say, okay, the rivers we know is going to be true. Right? We know there's a river, at least up until here, or here rather, right? Nobody follows it. There's all kind, we're looking at this area, 002.002, and we're like, oh yeah, man, it's all kinds of rapids in here. It's rough. Nobody really goes up to those hills. We hear weird noises in there, and yeah, we know that the river goes up in those hills, but we don't chase after it. We don't have that exploration attitude. Nobody here is that curious enough to go chase that river and die. So we're not worried about it. All we care about is the river comes through and it's nice and clear, and the fish migrate up into those hills somewhere, and then they come back down again, and we fish, and we get our water from there, and we wash our clothes in there, whatever we do, right? And we make merry, and it goes down to Lake Town, and then we don't talk about Smaug. He's not here. What's that word? What copyright? Who? No, whatever. And we live our lives. You as the party may want to explore that. And then you can start coming up in here, and then you can start making those determinations. Well, we thought the mountains continue, but maybe that is a lonely mountain. And never really went through there because there was no reason to. So this was actually a hill. and not a mountain. Though maybe I would say mountains probably more than anything else, or probably are because you can see them. So let me make some notes here. So we have the initial map versus the terrain, right? The initial hex map is merely the potential terrain. The real terrain may differ from this ideal version. Brian Smith says, if 80s movies taught him anything, the local wino who sees every time traveling killbot or ooze-based back alley monster. Yep, always. Because they got to have plausible deniability. Okay, so the map versus the terrain. This is our initial hex map. What the stuff that we know to be true, the stuff where the real terrain of the map basically line up is that known area. And the spotted area more or less. But nobody really knows that much what's in the spotted area, but you could see it. You're in your fields, you see the river, you see the hills, you know it's there. You don't really know much about it. If there's anything in there, you may or may not know about it, but you got the terrain, right? That's kind of spotted. We know the terrain. The next level, we're going backwards, I guess. So spotted, all features beyond secrets are known. I'm gonna call it, I guess I should call it explored, since I want to use the word known, and okay. I might need to change that. Can I change that? Yes, I can. We'll call it explored. I'm gonna have to shrink that bad boy down. Let's shrink that down. Can I rotate it a bit? Okay. There we go. Boom. Okay, let's call it explored. Explored, there might be secrets still in here, right? We got to leave room for secret stuff. Maybe I should make another elements of a hex. You got the terrain, landmarks, and features, and secrets. The secret lair of the so-and-so, that's a secret, obviously. It's called the secret lair. It is there in the words. The big hill that they call Bald Hill, that's a landmark. Feature, the pond, the local fishing hole, it could be the river, it could be anything else, a waterfall, a particular copse of woods, something that's may not be. I tend to think that they're fairly visible, but more or less, it's gonna depend. But they're pretty readily findable. So unknown has never been cataloged. Let me change. Actually, I was going to change. So these are, I guess I want to call these facts. All right, facts. One fact is known. Spotted, the terrain is definitely known. Scouted, obviously, terrain, landmarks. Obvious, that would be kind of an obvious feature. Landmarks, features are known. What's the difference between scouted and explored? That's a good question. Do I have more words than I need? Do I just need scouted? Maybe I don't. Maybe I don't need spotted as I'm thinking about it. All right, terrain plus one landmark feature known. Brian Smith says scouted, seen, explored, set foot on. No, I'm thinking more explored is like you've been digging around in there. It's been searched at least somewhat. Yeah, like Heroes and Homers saying scouted, seen from a distance, explored close up. Like scouted, I could also see if you were traveling through, you just kind of that's your scouted. So I'm gonna I just created more terms than I needed, which is fine. That's how things happen. I'm just gonna change scouted, spotted to scouted. Okay. So what I'm looking for is we have these kind of facts. So unknown, don't know anything, probably pretty rare. Rumored, one fact is known, terrain or a landmark. Or a landmark. Scouted, you get terrain plus one landmark. And explored, you're kind of getting everything. Secrets, I think you have to kind of dig around for. They're hidden enough that you kind of need to find them, right? You may know the neighborhood, but you don't necessarily know where the fox has dug the hole into your neighbor's barn where they have their little den unless you kind of go around and find it. Right? Even though you know that your area, you still got to find it. Or like the field, like where's the mouse in your apartment? You know your apartment or you know your house. You know it very, very well, but the field mouse can still be hidden somewhere. Like that's kind of your secret, right? Your lairs, could be a dungeon entrance, could be whatever camp. You kind of gotta find it to find it. Because they can always be something can come up. Someone can, it could be the secret camp of the bandits. Well, you got to find it because they move it or they just got there or whatever. It's not something you can kind of know. So we got unknown is nothing. Rumored, something. Something comes back to you. Could be terrain or a landmark. And of course, I mean, I haven't even gotten the fact that maybe it could be false. I suppose it would be the other thing. Might be, or I don't know. You can kind of get into how much you want to deal. I haven't really been talking about, fake, false information. But there's that. Yeah, right. Could also be somewhat true, mixed truth and false. For the moment, I'm going to leave that in your hands. If you decide to kind of work on this further, then yes, you could totally be something like, hey, it's true. That's kind of true or kind of not true. In this case, it's kind of so vague. It's kind of like, oh, I know that there are hills beyond, like, oh, we know these hills here, but there's also hills beyond there, right? But in between the mountain and the Badlands, or maybe we just kind of vaguely know about the Badlands, right? Oh, there are Badlands, right? It's kind of so vague. It's not super helpful anyway. So I don't know if we even need to mess with the fact that it might just totally be false. But yeah, you could. There's lots of things you could play around with there. So now we've done that. We've set up a little bit. We've got these gradations of knowledge where we can look at, and we can look at our map in terms of, again, either for ourselves as solo players, or if we're running a game and we're gonna kind of do this more or less on the fly. We've got our what do we absolutely know? And again, there might be secrets in here. There might be bandits hanging out in this hex, but everything else, is known. It is known here. This is known. These areas, people have spotted them, they've seen them, may have walked through them, but they haven't fully explored them or anything. So we know the terrain, and if there's a landmark, if there's a face in one of these hills that looks like George Washington, or there's a giant nose-like rock on this mountain, you can kind of see it. Hey, jail. But it certainly has not. Nothing about this is known because nobody's really dug in. Nobody's really explored those Badlands. Okay. Got that? So one of the things I think came up that also came up in Source of Nile, I know Daniel has this mentioned, it came up, he uses it in his solo game, is this kind of idea of, well, there's kind of two ideas that are sort of linked together. scouting and reporting, right? I've been trying to think of. I haven't really got my thoughts together, so I'm still feeling out. But I really like the idea of coming up with kind of a campaign procedure. I don't mean campaign and like here's your right. We're playing not a game campaign, but I mean like your party, like an army or something, goes on campaign. And what are the kind of procedures around campaigning? Like, what do you do? You have an information gathering phase, which is usually by default going to the tavern, going to the job board, and seeing, oh, there's a dragon that's been coming from the east and terrorizing the town. Okay, right. That's kind of our info. And then you say, hey, you there, bartender, do you know anything about the dragon? Or you say to the GM, I'd like to spread. I got 10 gold. I'm going to go to the local taverns. I'm going to spread it around and I'm going to see what people tell me. And then we're going to find out about, oh, these villages were hit. This village was hit. Then this village was hit. This village was hit. And we saw it coming through the gap in the mountains kind of thing. Like, okay, right. You're getting that information gathered. Usually just doing this as a party. And then once you've gathered as much of that kind of information as is there, then you put together your group of hirelings, whatever other people, your hangers on, you equip up, and then you head, out the road, and you go up there. Right. So this would be your, job board, rumor, tavern rumors, gossip, etc. Those are your sort of reports. Now, what I know that, like I said, Daniel, aka Bandit's Keep, uses in his solo game is he has these kind of, I don't know what frequently calls them, mappers. Essentially, someone that goes out and on behalf of his player characters and goes out to, I guess, to try to find stuff. Right, there are dungeons out here, but we don't know where. So instead of us going out, we're going to spend a certain amount of money and whatever resources, downtime, blah blah blah. We're going to send out scouts. And I think this doesn't need to just be for your for a solo game. And it you can have this be a part of just your regular game. You can sort of, right, you can hire guides to scout areas for the party. Basically, they generate reports. And this is a way to, I won't say encourage down, depending on how your game works, depending on what the party's doing, you may or may not have a ton of downtime laying around. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. For example, in Daniel's game that I play in, we have a couple of magic user types. So I think it's one magic user and one elf, and we have a cleric also. And when they are learning spells, that takes some amount of time and resources. So we end up, because we want them to get their new spells and we want them to learn these things, we encourage it when we have the opportunity and the thing and ever. But then the rest of us, or just that downtime, isn't necessarily useful for the rest of us, depending on what we're doing, or just as a party, right? They're doing that stuff, which is very useful to us. But what else could we be doing in the downtime? Well, what we could be doing, and granted, our game, the areas are mostly known at this point. We're mostly traversing areas that are either pretty well known to us already, or some of the areas that are maybe not known are kind of magically not known, if that makes sense, or magically, what would the word be? Obscured, so that it's not really scouting in the hex map kind of sense. In any case, a way that your party could use, another way for them to spend some gold, another way for them to get some. Certainly, this scouting, having some scouts available to send, is a great way to generate kind of plot hooks, things like that. Is if they have heard something maybe out this way. Oh, we heard of dragons out here to the north, but we don't know where. And the party's looking at it, and they've got this much, and they're like, man, there's a lot of, and of course, this could extend beyond just we're looking at the limits of my map here, but this could keep, obviously there could be more real estate here. Going, okay, well, we know it came through 0202 because that's reports from said it flew and it didn't seem to fly into these mountains coming here. But after that, we don't know, and we don't know that very well. So we want to send us some scouts so that we're not running around just willy-nilly in the wilderness. And then, oh, by the way, maybe sending a few lone scouts that are swift on foot or hidden whatnot will not arouse the suspicions of any creatures, or at least any, if there's any if the dragon's there or something else, they probably not going to remark or even really notice one person running around, but they might notice the 20 of us or whatever number. Once we have, if we have a baggage train and we've got, maybe we bring some mercenaries, whatever we're doing, whatever forces we bring about, they might notice that, and we're slow and we're exposed. So we'd rather not. And potentially, since we might be going to hills or the mountains, maybe we're thinking, yeah, let's see if we can get kind of a beat on where the thing might be. So we're going to send out some scouts, and we'll do that. And maybe while they're doing that, we're going to do some other research. Maybe we'll take care of some other things. Then hopefully some of these scouts will get back and they will tell us, they'll do something like, I don't know, like, hey, whoops, let me get my selection thing going. Oops. We went here. And we went here, and the dragons, and we found the dragon. We found it. There it is. Or at least we think we did. And of course, if you want to establish how good their information is, then you can figure that out, right? You can do something like we can have a D6 kind of roll for how well they do. We could, I don't know, failure on a 1, or maybe we'll say extreme failure. Maybe they're dead. Failure. Mixed, which might mean something true, something false. One true thing. This might be 2. I don't know if that would even be. That might even be too much. Maybe we do 1, 2. Stop. 3. Oops. Failure will delay to re-roll or return based on morale. Something like that, right? We could do. So we send out our scouting, send out our scouts. And our scout generates a report for us. We can roll to see what they found. On a 1, that's just extremely failure, which maybe is that they died. I don't know, captured, wounded and dying. Could be something like that. Failure, but will return. Turn delayed. They ran into something that they couldn't deal with. Maybe something they got lost. Something held them up, but they didn't actually find the dragon. The third one is a failure, but then if their morale is fine, they might try to delay and they get a reroll. Right? See if they maybe reroll +1. I don't know, because they obviously will know something. Or maybe just a reroll. I don't know. You could figure. I think these are the things where you can kind of decide how you want to, how you want these gradations of success and failure to be. Here's Homer says, I feel like the sky table might require. Yeah, you could subtable the stuff out, of course. Extreme failure, make that a subtable. Sure. I'm just trying to give you guys the basics. If I read it up something more formalized, if I read up something more formal, then for me, I'll make the decision whether I feel like it's worth the squeeze to have to roll on a bunch of tables or just roll once and come up with it. It's totally up to you. But yes, you could break it out. You could use, I'm using it in a D6 kind of thing here. You could use 2D6. You could use D100, right? You could, I mean, AD&D would use D100 and have all these percentages that you'd be adding and subtracting. Add 5% if they did this, add 12% if they did that kind of thing, right? All these different things could come into it. You could obviously add terrain modifiers. You could modify these by the terrain, which is probably what I would do is have something here, then maybe have something where terrain is adding and subtracting some things to it. But the bottom line is that you send out the scouts. It's something you can do to send out the scouts. And certainly if you're solo playing, like I said, it's something that, Daniel does in his game, send out the scouts, see what's there and comes back. Or this is where you as the party, if you're not using the scouts, right, when you first hit a hex. So here's the other part, right? So, right, when the party enters a hex, I should say like a new hex, maybe a new hex. ... Okay. If it was an unknown hex, we're going to, we'll roll some dice. Roll on the terrain table to determine if the terrain matches the potential version. Oh, Heroes and Homebrew says that does anyone find it frustrating that you can't make text labels curve? I mean, yeah. I mean, if I was, so I presume you're talking about Worldographer. I would not, if I was, if I was doing this if I was making this map to print in something and I was at all halfway serious about it, I would not do my text labels or anything in Worldographer. Just wouldn't do it. I would use any kind of graphics program. Obviously, if you have something like Photoshop or one of the Affinity suite, if you have, I think GIMP, which is free, and there's other ones because they're going to have all the tools to do a lot of stuff that just Worldographer doesn't have. Like if I wanted to have something to show these degradations, if I was in a photo, an image editing or image, a digital design, drawing, whatever art application, I could shade these different opacities. I could put some gray over there with some different opacities or black or white or whatever, and I could show how we're going from known to unknown. Like it'd be really fairly easy. It's just not possible with Worldographer. I mean, that's Worldographer is great for kind of the hard kind of, I don't know, data driven sort of put it out there and get all the information, but it's not, it's just not. I wouldn't say it's the most attractive maps, but they're certainly usable. But yeah, for things like text on curves, or if you want to put any, like I said, you just want to kind of edit them at all different ways, I would leave. But yeah, it would be nice to be able to kind of curve explored around, or maybe make scout at a curve like that. And they have pathing, so it's not like it's impossible. I doubt it's a priority for them to do. They probably could do it. I mean, these are the kind of things that cartographer or campaign cartographer has all that kind of stuff that you can do, and it can look really pretty. It's just a bear, to me anyway. It's just a bear. So maybe the most important of this, which somehow I have saved for last, is that we're going to roll on a table, and I'm just going to do one of these as a sample because I don't feel like doing all the terrain types. So we're going to have a kind of like a terrain. Actually, that's not what I wanted. I wanted to do this, right? What is the terrain table, right? So we have this terrain. And the terrain table is going to tell us basically how closely the actual terrain matches the potential terrain. Because remember, part of this whole thing, part of the whole cheat that we're doing is we're drawing on our map. But then when we actually get exploring, we're going to come as we get into I would say even kind of these, maybe depending on how you want to do it, could even just be getting into scouted areas. How much of this matches up with whatever. So as an example, I feel like you could have a, depending on some modifiers, depending on where you're going, you could say, I'm going to do I don't know if there's really a way for me to do it. There's not a way to do tables in here. So I'm just going to have to do this. So first of all, we have to start with, let's just take grasslands as a terrain. Though probably it's a bad example. But we could say that you might have, let's see. So what could, okay. All right, we got grasslands. We're going to put that in the middle. Grasslands might actually be wetlands on the one hand. And we're going to say on the other hand, it might be forest. We could do something like this, right? This is an example. So if we start with grasslands and we roll a d6, 1d6 for grasslands, on a 1 to 2, it's actually forests. On a, well, let me see. How do we want to do this? 1 to 2. It's actually grasslands. Something like this. Or maybe, let's do this instead, actually. The least likely one is it's actually forest. Two to 3, it's actually wetlands. And there could be, and this is just, what I want is to have basically kind of a 50-50 split, or it doesn't have to be 50-50, some kind of split to where if we want to add modifiers, we could, right? So we could say something like, I don't know, +1 to roll if area previously, what do we call it? What did we call it? We said it was, if area is rumored. +2 to roll if area is scouted. Does this make sense? And obviously, if it could be, we could have a -1 to roll. Oh, I guess I should say if rumored true, if area was rumored false. And then, I don't know, -2 to roll if area unknown. Okay, this is just a, these are not, do not consider these final, but what I'm hopefully maybe appreciate the concept over the actual execution at this point. So what you do is when you're moving, we're in this area, we're in the explored area. The explored area is kind of locked in. The scouted areas, people have traveled through, blah, 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 but maybe maybe it's not as known as anything. And we can come up with these for each terrain type. And I would probably say mountains, you're not changing. Mountains are mountains. I don't think, oh, look, it's actually a hill. It's a mountain. I mean, you can see it from far away, right? It's a mountain. I would be even more inclined to add to these rolls if there was like hills, because also I feel like they're kind of obvious. But your miles may vary on that. You could make it if the more gonzo you want to get, or magical, or whatever excuse you want to do, like, oh, you're playing in a Fey environment, that stuff just changes. until it's locked in, fair enough, right? You can sign that, but you're gonna will you make these for each one of your and you can have more. I'm just using 3. It might work. I mean, it kind of works best with one kind of most likely. I'm kind of doing it here like, well, on a 1 it's actually a forest, but maybe it's a forest with grasslands. There might be something else. Maybe we would actually call this a maybe broken lands might be a better one. So yeah, it's actually broken lands, or it could be wetlands. You missed it, and I know it is actually grasslands. So now, if you're coming from this explored area and you're moving in this unknown area, you can have that bit of randomness. It might be, and like I said, change these up. And then, if you're unknown, it makes it even more unlikely. So if you do end up teleporting, or I don't know, somewhere else where you end up going, or if you want to say that mountains block, again, you can have rules too, right? You can make up rules that say, hey, mountains block line of sight, if you will. That this mountain means that even if this mountain were part of the terrain, that it's going to block the other side. You can make up those rules. These rules can be completely, obviously you want to customize whatever this setup is for whatever your particular game area, your particular table is like. So you're going from explored to scouted. We're mostly sure, right? They're pretty darn sure that this is a lake, but maybe the lake isn't as big as it is. Maybe it's more swamp than lake. And we can have one of these for, say, let's just do a different example, right? We can have, lake example that maybe it's wetlands, lake, I don't know, river, something like that. So maybe we're starting with lake. Maybe the actuality is it's not, I don't know, it seems like a lake, but it's not, or it's not a huge lake. There again, I think there are probably some. I would definitely have some things was like, if you're at the shores of a lake, you kind of know it's a lake. I probably wouldn't have that change too much, but other things you might. So we will make one of these, and I don't have time to run through the whole thing today. Maybe I'll work on it on my off time. Maybe we'll do it on another stream. We come up with these tables for each one of these, and then as you're entering, you're going from the known areas into more or less unknown areas. We can roll to see how far that unknown area, to the extent that it's unknown, varies from what you thought was there. And I hope through all this short story made very long that we can kind of have the stuff that we enjoy about the exploration as we're discovering it, but also take advantage of all our mapping tools. And then also, if you want to, we can turn some of this into some downtime stuff, which is great for creating plot hooks, for getting new landmarks out on the map. It's the way the party can do some things to kind of narrow their scope of their investigations without having to hex crawl over the map. And another way, it is kind of, it does turn things a little bit more into kind of a point crawl, I think, if you like that. If you like the fact that, hey, once it's explored, if we look at it and say, once the if our scout has made it back, then you end up getting something more along the lines of a point crawl. So the scout is like, oh yeah, I obviously we don't need to crawl from here. I went like this. I went, Now you could potentially have a point crawl if you wanted to have that kind of action in your hex crawl. And the thing is, it's, I've always mentioned, I think there's nothing wrong with having both the point crawl and hex crawl features at the same time. I don't feel like you need to choose one or the other. And this is a good way to kind of think about it. If you take this, if you send out scouts, then you have the advantage of, generating routes, right? That's essentially your point crawl. And they could be, and we can, and you can delve into how correct the routes are, or incorrect, how efficient, blah, blah, blah. Maybe he zigzagged all over the place for a reason. That's the route that you have until you develop a new route, kind of thing. And of course, you have to try to follow it and find the landmarks that they found, right? There's some work involved there. in getting that route. Oh, you turn left at the thing that looks the hill that looks like someone's broken nose. Okay, then over here you're going to find that pond that smells, and then you follow that and you're going to get over here. So then it becomes this interesting thing of, okay, now we sort of have this route, but we have to find the landmarks. And once we've kind of put those landmarks together, then we have that route. And we've turned the kind of hex crawler thing into more of a point crawler thing, but the hex crawl stuff is still all there. And we still have the potentiality to potentially get lost, lose the route. Maybe someone will obliterate the route. Maybe we'll blow up that something, or we end up wanting to explore. It's not a one or the other kind of thing. You can have both of them at the same time. But there's a lot of interesting things that we can do with this. Let me know what you think. Let me know if this idea seems like, if you're someone who solo hex crawls and you've been kind of caught looking for the perfect tool and you haven't found it, does this seem like something that would be workable for you? Do you feel like this is still knowing too much and you want to totally be in the unknown? Does it kind of hit a good spot for you of being able to do some amount of prep, or just at least readiness, or even it's just pressing a button to generate a bunch of map, which is so easy to do nowadays that I feel it just feels like we should be taking advantage of it. And that's kind of how I started down this path. If there's some other methods I missed or tools I think might work or help or replace it, let me know. Hey, Krister. You missed most of my life. Well, Krister, you have the benefit of being able to check it out at your leisure. And I'm pretty sure you do solo stuff. At least that's my recollection. So I'm definitely keen to hear your thoughts. Let me know somewhere after you ended up watching the whole thing. But with that, ladies and germs, gentlemen, people, friends, countrymen, let me know your thoughts. And with that said, enjoy the rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on. Talk to you later. Bye now.